it though because the code's not really nice looking. But
Right.
No worries.
It's okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast. Blur my background only because my kids totally, I'll blame them, totally trashed my home office. But uh, I'm welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast. As always, I'm Tom's Hardware Editor in Chief, Avram Pilch, joined by Associate Editor Les Pounder. Ash, who's normally with us, is out sick, but we've got a very special guest today who goes by the name Frumtha Future.
That's right.
And he's showing us some fairly futuristic projects. He's including his ChatGPT powered Raspberry Pi watch, which is, to my knowledge, the first ChatGPT watch anyone has made, and it's powered by a Pi 4. So, what can you tell us? What can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah. I go by From the Future. I have a YouTube channel. I just love building stuff. I just kind of decided to start putting them online. But I was doing them on the side anyway. My technical background is I have a degree in mechanical engineering. But of course, everything's fascinating to me. I built rockets throughout college. We built control systems that could control the flight of rockets and stuff like that. So just I'm really interested in wearables and offline computing. I think, obviously the watch I built, it's not adding functionality that people have no idea or had no idea was coming. But I think that we're coming up to an age where offline computing is getting small enough and affordable enough that it can be a viable option in the future, which I think gives the wearer a lot more autonomy.
Cool. That's really cool. So, can you show everyone this amazing watch you have? Do you have that? Do you have your ChatGPT watch handy?
I sure do. So this is the watch. It's I guess that's the best angle. The watch, so it's on right now. It boots on power up. So whenever you plug it in on the hip, it boots up. And if you're not using it, you can save battery and unplug it and then just plug it on later. All it has right now is 3 functionalities. You have, of course, a watch face. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, till it went off, yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I coded a sleep mode in it because I kept forgetting to turn it off and I kept killing my battery. But it's a fully custom watch face. It's pretty standard too. Just shows the date, the time, the battery life, which I can talk to you guys about how I calculate that because it's not as intuitive as really it should be with Pis, in my opinion. And then it can connect to Wi-Fi. The actual hardware of the watch, let's see. There we go. The actual hardwares, I have 3 tactile buttons, an OLED screen, a mic, and then an IR LED, which I didn't really show much in the video. It'll come up later. And then just a light to tell me that the mic is hot. I think that I think that especially with these wearables, when you have for a proper UI, you need things that say when the camera's hot or when the mic is hot, or else you get a situation like Google Glass where people are just scared that it's always hot, right? So I think that's critical if you want to rebuild something like this. And then all of this is connected to the Pi on my hip, and then a 2,000 milliamp consumer battery. It's meant to charge iPhones, but if you plug a USB in it, it'll run your Pi as well. And so this will, if I leave everything on, this will last about 6 hours. But that's really not, which is abysmal compared to, a phone, but you're not using it all the time. So if I'm working or if I'm coding for, an hour, I'll turn it off, and it generally lasts all day. And I bring around an extra just in case. So yeah. I think that I did see I got a lot of comments about how about the size, or why didn't I use an ESP32, or why didn't I use a smaller microcontroller? But I think I think those questions only make sense if you're not seeing that. Like, the whole point is to build a foundation for offline computing. And so I want to
Yep.
be able to run neural nets, which this is technically doing, I guess, recurrent neural nets. But I want to be able to run all that offline. I also want to be able to train new neural nets offline. I want to be able to store it all. And you really don't get that power for the size outside of a Pi 4. So
Yeah, is that so? ChatGPT, obviously, to use ChatGPT on a Pi right now, you have to connect to the cloud. But
right.
Les has shown how you can, although poorly performing, get like Lambda, or no, is it Llama?
Llama
To
7B.
Llama.
Yeah.
I get confused between the Llama and the Lambda. Llama to run. What's your plan for running it locally? What technology are you going to use?
Well, I'll probably, I'll probably abandon ChatGPT. I just think for the moment, they are, they have one of the better models. But I know there's a lot of open source alternatives coming out, and some rumors that some, I think Meta might be releasing an open source one. But a lot of that's up in the air, and whatever's not up in the air, I'm not informed on yet. So I think as soon as I can find an open source alternative, I'll plug it in. But I think as important as offline computing is, there is still a ton of functionality, obviously, to connecting to the internet. So I think so long as that option is available but not relied upon, you're in good shape. And so, to answer your question, I'll probably find an open source alternative. Basically, any cool feature that we rely on our phones for, I just want to pack whatever offline or open source or whatever onto here. So, you kind of avoid that infrastructure. And if you're in the middle of the woods, you're just as high tech as you are in the middle of a city,
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, that's obviously good because you can't always be connected. And I think we'd all like it to work more locally. But how much storage would you need to store a language model where it had all of that data on on you physically? And then how would it update itself with new information?
So that I haven't even gotten around to designing something like that, but of course that would be the prime design parameter. I think that you'd have to work something out where you can leverage the I don't think you'd be able to have all of its information on board. I mean, you're basically downloading an efficient internet like that. But I think if you can leverage some kind of language capabilities from it and be able to have some, I actually tried to do something like, I try to make a light language model like what you're saying by using Spacey. It's a language processing package. And then trying to strategically download just useful information from the internet. Or if I ever accessed information, it would store only what I used and then have Spacey access it. And that was the closest I could get to a light enough, basically ChatGPT, kind of built from scratch on here. But I think for you to get the full functionality, I haven't really worked out if that's even possible, but it's a goal.
It would be amazing to have literally, all that information in your pocket, no data connectivity anywhere. Just you have all the information it needs to answer a question on your person.
Right.
It's like it's like having commander data walking next to you all day, every day. Apart from it probably can use contractions. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think if you are able to work that out, especially on a smaller form factor, and I think given time you will. I think if there's a way to be able to efficiently store like if we could take the equivalent to like what a zip file is and instead have just little bookmarks on what the internet is and have a language model that can kind of like riff on that, I think maybe that could be a first step, not a complete one, but a first step.
So one thing I think is really cool about your project is how you managed to get it to, kind of truncate its responses so that you're only getting like one line of text or not that much text so that it fits comfortably on the watch. How did you accomplish that?
Sure. So, well, as anyone who has used ChatGPT may know, you can outright tell it, don't give me more than 2 sentences, and so I think I told it, just in general, never give me more than 4 sentences or 5 sentences, and but the actual code to display it's a simple just Python function where it counts the number of characters. I think this screen can fit 16, and then if it sees that's going to go over, it just kicks it adds a a slash in, and then makes an array of that. And so the screen has a homegrown function that just if you give it whatever text, it can just display only what's going to fit on that line. And then the actual information, ChatGPT is smart enough to obey your commands to make it whatever's convenient to display.
That is really cool. What types of information do you think are good to get from ChatGPT on a watch? Like what do you find are the best use cases?
I think that, so I actually used it to debug my 3D printer. For some reason, I have an Ender 3 and I love it, but I hate it. And
yeah, we've all had days like
right,
that.
right. Everyone I meet, they say the same thing. I found that I can be tunnel vision sometimes, and so I just asked it, hey, in general, why could the filament maybe not be extruding properly, right? A very general question, but one of the things it named was actually something I just didn't check. Like, I knew it could happen, I just didn't check it. And so I kind of find it, when it comes to just very basic technical details, like almost the stuff that's too simple that you wouldn't think it's useful, that's actually exactly where it is useful. Because it covers, if you're thinking of 3 of the 4 things, it says the 4th thing that you're like, oh, well, obviously, but you still haven't checked yet,
Yeah, it's almost like a co-pilot. It's there to check that you're doing things correctly or you've not missed anything.
Exactly. And if it comes to like and also there's no ChatGPT app, and so like or if there is, it must have happened since I last checked. So like even things I use ChatGPT for and I want to ask it, but I'm not near my computer. Like I was changing my oil the other day and I had to look up what kind it was. So I was just in the store and I was just wearing it because I wanted to get used to the feel. So I asked it and it told me the right oil, and it was right. It was right. My car's not broken yet.
That is really cool. I mean, I think people are going to want to go around and ask for things like that a lot, apart from how they do it now on their phone. So I understand that the glasses that you're wearing are another project you're working on. What are they?
That's right. So let me see. So these are decryption glasses. The watch was meant to be a foundation for other projects like this. And I suppose that this is the first child of that. So these can, everything's flipped. I have a camera right here, and then it follows a cord down my back and back to my hip. And they're fully functional. I just don't have a demo right now. But basically what they do is you speak into the watch. If I have a message, say I want to store my password to my computer in plain sight on my desk. Writing it in plain text is a pretty stupid idea. But with the watch, you can speak your password into it. It will run it through an encryption process. Right now, it's just a cipher because it's easier for the glasses to see. But I could say, my password is bunnies, and then it will encrypt it, and I could write that down. And so it would look something like this. If I want to store Christmas presents, none of this really makes sense if you're looking at it with a normal eye. But using computer vision, the glasses, I look at them, and the watch displays, oh, this is I can't even think of a Christmas present. But it deciphers it because it has the key on board, the same key that you use to just encrypt it.
Yeah.
And it does that real time. Once I have a more advanced display, it's a much nicer view. But basically, what this means is all of your documents around your office, you can encrypt. Just it's a relatively weak encryption, but no one knows what you use, and so you can encrypt all of these actual papers in your office, and then come back, glance at them, and now you know what they say. You're the only one who can read them. I think that's really cool.
So what does it look like on the inside of your glasses? Like, what type of screen do you have there?
So I don't have a screen in the glasses right now. It's just on the watch. I'm just basically prototyping how useful it is before I put a screen in there.
Yeah.
When I do get to it, it will likely be some kind of projection. But I want to avoid what Google Glass did. So I think I want it to be more intentional. I want the screen to be more intentional. Like, this is an actual task I'm looking at. It will probably be on like an arm, and I can wield it out. And I also want the camera to be intentional. So you have to physically flip it forward or flip it back. So you're not always, if you're talking to someone, they're not just staring into a camera lens. Like, I guess you guys are, but I'm also staring.
Yeah. Well, it's I think the question of wearables with cameras is one that it's interesting, because we've gotten to a point where people, I guess the glass hole phenomenon happened, when Google Glass came out, and so now it was considered to be like,
Yeah.
don't wear your camera around.
Right.
But it's interesting, because at the same time we're having sort of the same debates about cameras as we are about AI, or rather, I believe, if we're not, I believe we will soon be having the same debates about AI that we were about, say, wearable, headsets with cameras. Because at one point, it was thought of as super cool, like, wow, that's really cool to walk around and have heads up display. I will never forget, I used to have a guy who wrote for me whose name is Steve Mann, and he is the founder. He is the world's first human cyborg. I encourage everybody to Google him if they're not familiar with his work. Since like the 80s, when he was a student at MIT, he's been building wearable headsets that have that have had PC computers built into them, way more cumbersome computers than than a Raspberry Pi, and using them for like all kinds of AR, what he calls mediated reality stuff or whatever. And people would react to him in a very negative way, besides the fact that some of his headsets were just really out there, like especially the early ones. He was in like Paris on a vacation or something, and he was in McDonald's, and like they threw him out of McDonald's, and he got like his gear broke or whatever. He was like, it was a whole thing, a whole big story, because he never takes his gear off. But his point, which I found kind of interesting, is like, hey, if wherever you go, there could be cameras watching you, CCTV or whatever. So why don't you have the right to watch it? And then at the same time, if you were a person with a photographic memory, and you really have a perfect memory, you've seen everything and you remember it just like a camera would. So it's interesting. On the other hand, now when we talk about AI, we have an interesting question, which is, does the AI have the right to learn everything, to have the same right to creativity that a person does? Like, we have not to drag us too far off the topic, but I'd be curious your opinion on this.
Sure.
Have you used Google Bard at all?
I haven't. No, not yet.
Well, it's very similar to ChatGPT, and and Bing's implementation of ChatGPT. Same story, pretty much, different underlying language model. And one thing that we discovered at Tom's Hardware last week is that Bard was plagiarizing an article of ours. They were blatantly plagiarizing an article of ours. Now, what happened was we said, I was logging in to test it, and I asked it which CPU is faster, a Ryzen 9 7950X3D or an Intel Core i9 13900K. We had done an article with exactly that question like a few days earlier, and it came out and it said the language model Bard does not provide any citations. It doesn't tell you where it got its information unless you later ask, right? So, although I have seen a couple of times where it cited Wikipedia, but otherwise it doesn't seem to give any citations. So it said, in our tests, we found that that the AMD was 12% faster than the Intel chip. Well, that rung an alarm in my head because I remember that in our article we said it was 12% faster. So I asked it, where did you get this? Where did you get this information that you say our tests show? Oh, it said, oh yeah, we got it from Tom's Hardware. Well, don't you think that having something, which I literally asked this question, don't you think that having something that taking data from someone else and claiming it as your own testing is plagiarism? And the bot said, yes, what I did is a form of plagiarism. I'll try not to do it again. However, the next day when I went back and I asked it if it had ever plagiarized, it said no. And when I asked it about, hey, that Tom's Hardware has a screenshot of your, because we took an article about this, a screenshot of your of you admitting to plagiarism, it said the person who wrote that article made a fake screenshot to discredit me.
Oh wow!
So what I think is an interesting question is, in Google's FAQ on Bard, what they claim is Bard doesn't need to have citations because Bard comes up with original ideas, and and what I find interesting about that is, like, there's certain, in our case, it had a very direct piece of data that we could trace back. Like, oh yeah, how many other publications have tested these two CPUs and said that one was exactly 12% faster than the other? We got them, we busted them. But in a lot of cases, especially I asked the question again and it obscured it a little bit, just saying one is faster than the other or giving it a slightly more generic answer gives it plausible deniability, right? Like it doesn't tell you where it got the data from, so it could have gotten it from any number of sources. Well, a human can kind of do that too, right? Like you read a whole bunch of different things, you learn something, and then you say, okay, this is true, and you don't cite sources because it's just, everybody knows this. If I tell that USB 3.1 is 5 gigabit per second, I don't need to tell you that I read that at the USB implementer forum or I read it on PC World or whatever, because it's just a fact that's out there and I could have gotten it from any of a million places. AI, though, by being trained, knows exactly where it got all of its facts. It's just not telling you. You could argue that, like a person, it has the right to just say, oh, I learned this somewhere. But I don't know if we should say that it, that just because it can do it, that, that it has the right not to cite sources. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. No, so many of these questions, I feel like they're only going to become more and more, and they're only going to, there's only going to be more of them, and they're only going to get more nuanced. I think, have you used Brave? Brave has implemented Brave AI. Brave, for those who don't know, is a browser. It's implemented Brave AI, and when you look something up, it answers, but after each sentence, it indicates its source, and then each source is a link that comes up with the search. So it seems like the problem that you outlined, that seems like some solution where it explicitly, before being prompted, where'd you get this, it gives the actual link on where you got that.
I mean, Bing gives you footnotes. I mean, it's still an economic problem for those of us who produce
Sure.
content for the web, because people are like, hey, I just read this, that's fine, I'm not going to go to your website. But beyond that, like, it's, by not giving you the source of information, they're also doing a disservice to the reader, I feel like, because how do I know whether to trust it if I don't know where it came from? Like, so, but what's interesting there is, like, it sort of hinges on the question of whether or not machine learning needs to be treated like human learning, because in human learning, if you kind of have mastered a fact that you could have gotten from any number of sources, you don't necessarily have to cite the source, unless it's a unique fact or a unique view or something like that. So it's I think it's an interesting question whether electronic things sort of have the same rights as a person, because a person could go around, a person is a camera. You could say that a person is a camera, right? I go around all day seeing things, and if I had a really good memory, I'd remember them perfectly. Not many people do, though. So have a real perfect memory.
No.
So
the difference is, no, the machines and the computers are products. They're physical entities that are just electrons and bits of sand pressed together to make PCBs. Whereas we're human beings, we have a soul, that sort of thing. So the difference is we're alive. That's not.
Right. I mean, I also think it's just, look, I don't have immediate access to whatever billions of, terabytes of, however, how many billions of lines of data, where I could just say, well, I do if I search on the internet. But what I mean is, like, in my brain, I don't have that. So, I mean, all the times when people are saying that, like, oh, ChatGPT passed the bar exam, maybe you too could pass the bar exam if you had access to all the information that it has and the ability to spit out data in a matter of seconds based on it. So
I do think a critical thing there is you are a camera and you do have memories, but you can't prove. Well, first of all, your memories are a lot more corruptible, but also you can't prove that to me. I think that I think that if we come to a point where you can show your memories as a picture and you can show me exactly what you saw, I think then we'll start viewing people in the same way that we're viewing machine learning, because there's a certain scalability to it. Your memory is yours, but I have no idea if you tell me about it, I don't know if there's bias. I don't know if you're misremembering.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. There's an absolutely horrifying episode of Black Mirror that I hasten to say I recommend.
Yeah.
Have you seen it, where they have the contact lens or something that lets them record every moment of their life?
The entire history of you.
Yeah. It is a great episode.
So I don't know. That's, I mean, in effect, that's what you get that's what you would get if you were in camera around all the time. Right. And coming to think of it, maybe we're better off without it. I'd say we are better off without it. But
yeah.
Yep.
I think that the way that I think even if we are better off without it, I don't think I don't think that has or ever will stop it happening anyway, if it's useful to someone or lucrative. I think that with the way that circuits are going, I think that will be possible, but it will come from not better or smaller battery. Well, you'll have to have smaller batteries, but I think it's going to come from low power circuits. Every single year we're able to shrink the actual need for the power. And I think maybe in the future we'll be able to get really creative where it uses such little power that you can power it off of, static electricity in the air or something like that. And we will be able to have such tiny cameras that, because you don't know if someone's wearing them or not, you just assume that they are, and then we'll have to reform our society based on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's I just it's just really it's fascinating to think of the questions that having this data at hand really raise for you. So besides your glasses, which is just such a super cool idea, like I just My concern, of course, being a glasses wearer, would be like, how would I wear glasses with my glasses? I guess I'd have to try and find a way to put the, to either attach it or something like that. For but that is such a cool idea. Are you planning to put any of the instructions for these projects on GitHub or somewhere where people can learn from your work?
I do think certainly with some of them, I think right now, because it's also new to me, I don't know what I really want to do long term with these projects. And if I do want to pursue, if one of them lights some kind of spark and I want to pursue some kind of product or whatever, I want to be able to still have all the code for that and, not have to be competing against myself. So, but I really don't know. Because I've gotten so much from the open source community, and with so many of these things, I wouldn't have been able to build them without the information I've seen on YouTube and articles, but also the tangible packages and stuff like that. So there's certainly a part of me that I want to give something back. I just don't know what yet.
Cool. Well, we really we thank you so much for coming on and joining us today and sharing this with us and our audience. That is just amazing work. What's the best place for folks to keep up with your projects and what you're doing?
I'd say YouTube right now. I'm putting the most effort into that right now. And if that changes, I guess I'll post something on there. But yeah, I think, and then, I'm just kind of having fun with it, and I'll see what happens from there.
That is absolutely fantastic. We're so grateful that you've joined us today. Thanks to everyone for listening and watching. We will be back next week at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. UK time with another special guest. And we'll see you then. Bye, everyone.